Check it out. Let me tell you one.
Freedom Hall!
What is up, my MMA brothers and sisters? I'm your host, Raul. Welcome to episode 10 of Let's Talk MMA. This is the first episode of the new year, so happy new year. We are now in 2017. I'm very optimistic about 2017. Then again, I'm optimistic of just about everything. But it's a new year, new start. I always think of positive things, always, looking forward to the good and things just getting better overall. But in the world of MMA, it's a fresh new start. It almost feels, because with this last event, UFC 207, we got some big things that happened to where going into 2017, we got some questions answered. We have more questions, and the ongoing Let's Talk MMA is just snowballing. So let's jump right into it. I want to try to keep this video a little bit shorter. It's just me. I'm going to go over the fights of UFC 207, mainly the top 3 ones of the main card. But 2 main things I want to start with. So let me just jump right into it. So Alex Oliveira versus Tim Means. So this was the very first fight of the event, and it started off really well. I would check it out just because it was an exciting fight. It was a fight on both sides right off the bat. Tim Means looked like he was starting to get kind of the better of Alex Oliveira as we were heading out to the end of the first round. But then there was this whole illegal knee. It ended up being called a no contest, which could have been a disqualification because Charles Oliveira did have a knee down and he got kneed in the head. What was even more interesting was, Joe Rogan and everybody else was kind of confused, whether that was or was not. But either way, let's just skip to the main point that I want to put here. Now that it's January 2017, there's going to be some new rules that are going to be implicated. Like, the one thing I have looked into about this is, in a nutshell, it's going to be more defined what a grounded fighter is. Obviously really relevant, because whether you're getting kneed, kicked to the head as a ground opponent, they're going to try to change that. The other thing is cleaning up the scoring criteria. So the whole 10-9 system, clearing up certain things. I figure they're going to try to more define what is a 10-8 round, so then it's a little bit more clear, rather than it's just your opinion as far as a judge, right? What I've seen, there's a lot of some commissions are going to do this, some commissions are not going to do that. So I haven't dove that much into it. I'm just going to throw out there's going to be some changes. So usually for the better. We'll see kind of what happens as we progress. We're now in the new year, so as the events happen, these type of things are definitely going to come up. So we'll see what happens. Next up, Niko Price. Now, Brandon Thatch is experienced. I've always enjoyed him in fighting, and I've always seen that he's well-rounded. Maybe typically a slower starter, and this is what kind of ended up being his downfall in this fight. But not taking anything away from Niko Price, what I thought was awesome was just the fact that he went in there, was attacking his jiu-jitsu over and over and over, ended up getting his choke, and then gets his brown belt as he's up there doing his commentary afterwards, which I just thought was really cool of his sensei. Just, hey, you got your tap out, here's your brown belt, well-deserved. And, I always think it's cool. My 2 daughters are actually just starting their jiu-jitsu path. I don't want to call it a career. I call it a path, something that I wanted to give them, and hopefully they'll thank me later. And I'm going to get to that actually in the whole Ronda Rousey, because I want to talk a little bit about martial arts and what I believe it is, and even within this sport, what it should represent and what it typically means for fighters, especially after a loss. But let's just keep it going. Let's jump into John Lineker versus TJ Dillashaw. Now, with this fight, I really wanted to see a brawl, but TJ, being the smart guy that he is, obviously stayed off of it. But what surprised me the most was that he had such a confidence standing up with Lineker, to where he didn't look tentative. It looked like he was going to stand up with him, and boom, he would go for the takedown. So each and every round, he would stand up with him, he would kick high, he would kick to the body, for the most part be successful with confusing him, and then out of nowhere, with the most perfect of timing, go for the shot. If you guys haven't seen that fight, I definitely would recommend it, just because it's really showing TJ in just being not only a great well-rounded fighter, but just his confidence level, versus someone who just hits really hard. Is dangerous, don't want to play with it yet. He was confident enough to know, you know what, I'm not going to get caught with anything big. I'm going to do this, that, and he just implemented his game plan perfectly, won all rounds, and that's it. I mean, as far as John Lineker, obviously all I can really say is I ideally would love to see him at 125. I don't know what he needs to do to kind of maybe change his lifestyle, get his diet a little bit lower, his weight a little bit lower, to make 125, because of his height, and he already has the power. I think that's where he would be most successful. But here at 135, he did pretty well. I mean, versus TJ, a prior champion, lost all the rounds. Obviously he hung in there because his head is made out of concrete apparently, but he got pretty beaten. So, we'll see what happens next with him. TJ, absolute great performance. I want to see him with Cody, which leads me to that fight. Dominick Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt. Now, with this fight, I already had Cody. Now, that's why I personally like to go with, all right, who's my heart going with? Who am I rooting for when I'm watching the fight? But also, who do I actually think is going to win? I was rooting for Cody. Alpha male is 40 minutes from me, so I've always had all of those fighters, as my personal picks. But even just watching the fight and going into it, I pretty much figured, I think Cody for 5 rounds is going to catch Dominick Cruz, and he's going to get Dominick Cruz in a lot of trouble, and he's probably going to make Dominick Cruz tentative, and that's kind of the way I saw it. Was he going to knock him out completely? I thought it was possible, but if not, I just kind of felt he was going to put the pressure on and maybe even win just that way. But to do it in the way that he did it, everything from the very beginning, keeping his distance so well, almost like he already knew all of Dominick Cruz's entrances. So as Dominick Cruz would, do his side to side, if it was something that Cody maybe, I'm not too sure what he's going to do here. Let me circle around. Let's restart. Oh, I think I know what he's doing. And his timing and his speed is what just got it going for him right from the get-go. So those first couple rounds, it was all Cody. And it was just amazing to watch. And as we kept on going, I didn't really think he was going to get tired out, so I wasn't really surprised there. I think some people maybe thought so, but, I mean, he has power, but he uses it when he needs it. He's not out there just going crazy, spending a bunch of energy where he doesn't need to. So I wasn't really surprised about that, but going into those later rounds, I would figure Dominick Cruz, being smart as he is, the highest IQ that we always said about MMA, he's going to figure something out, and let's see what he does. But even then, from takedown attempts that got either stuffed or, scrambled out of, where Cody ended up just still staying on the feet. You could see the frustration in Dominick Cruz. The cut obviously probably frustrated him and threw him off a little bit as well. So then we started seeing the robot. We started seeing push-ups. Just like, whoa, what is going on here? Cody is, showing off. He already showed off all his skills, and he just was looking like he was having a blast in there. And this is a title fight, his first title fight ever. Now, after watching him with Ariel, he had a great interview with Ariel, and he was talking about, he wanted to enjoy it. He obviously had those opportunities, but man, I was having fun with him in there, because it was just like, whoa, from the multiple knockdowns, and his little dancing antics and just his bobbing and weaving. Like, whoo! It was an amazing thing to watch. For winning a belt, that was one of the most impressive ways I've ever seen a challenger win a belt. And over Dominick Cruz, over someone who's been so dominant, it's just amazing. I don't really have that many words. If you haven't seen that, find a way. You got to see it. That performance was just Cody's best. His confidence level was at an all-time high. A lot of people talk about, his anger, this, that. Everything is so controlled as it's always been, and that proved it even more, because that hype and that just back and forth banter between the two, you would figure, maybe that's going to throw somebody off. Maybe it threw Dominick off, but maybe just Cody was too much for him, too fast, too powerful, too dangerous, and he just couldn't figure it out. But I'm going to bring up Dominick Cruz again in a second, because how he handled his loss, I think, was just the most impressive thing, besides even a lot of his wins. And I'm going to refer to Ronda Rousey. So let's, move it up to the next one. Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes. I'm sure you've all seen it. It lasted 48 seconds. That's very easy clip to share. I'm sure the whole wide world has seen this already. Now, if you haven't already, MMA Games and Fighting, my homie, he's always got all the clips. So if you haven't seen it, go check him out at MMA Games and Fighting on Instagram. And you'll get a bunch of clips of a lot of this stuff that we're talking about right now. Now, Ronda obviously lost, and she lost in a horrible fashion. Let me throw this out now. Amanda is probably is peaking, as they would call it. On her last fight with Miesha Tate, I mean, that I think was that turning point. The turning point of her confidence level, her turning point of what she knows she has. And the biggest thing that I've recognized out of that is she can hit from so far. She can hit from so far, and it also just is so effective. So when she took out Miesha Tate like that, I was a little surprised, definitely, because I just wasn't expecting it. But leading into this one, I knew that was going to be one of the things that was going to be to her favor. But getting into a grappling exchange, that's where I was going to be a little worried, because that is Ronda's world. So with that said, with Ronda, on the last episode when I was talking with Steve, and that's why I like to freestyle. I write simple notes, but I typically just freestyle this. You know, I just want to spit it out of my head the way it comes out. I don't try to rehearse any of these things. So with Ronda Rousey, I had mentioned something about she depends on her judo. And at the time, I didn't put too much weight on that. But now I see it as so relevant, because if you watch that fight, she just keeps reaching and reaching, going for that clinch, going for a throw. And obviously, if you look at all of the video leading up to this, and her coach is boxing. Sure, you need to learn boxing. It's surely good to know, but it's kind of like I'm a wrestler. So imagine if, it's just if, let's just play imaginary time. If she did as much boxing training as she did wrestling, once she started getting rocked, which was basically immediately, instead of also just throws, a shot, a double leg, a single leg, just scrambles in general, she was getting worked, obviously, with the hands. So just reaching for the leg, trying to trip her up, dropping your level down, any of those things could have created a scramble to maybe end up on the ground, where that is her world. That is where she is most comfortable. That is where all of her skills are at. The judo, obviously, she's good at throwing, but if you can't grab the girl, you just need to get her on the ground. Where if you notice, she just kept on trying. Obviously, she is tough. She got knocked out on her feet. If you watch that, most of the time, especially that final right hand, which was all force, all directly on the jaw. She did grab the fence a little bit, but she somehow was still on her feet. Ronda is so freaking tough. But those first couple of shots must have shocked her, rocked her. She was in emergency mode at that point. And then there was also the audio that came out with her coach's side freaking out as well, which does not help. Your coach, your corner needs to be the cool, calm, collective one. And it was just a downhill real quick, real fast. So I'm going to finish up with these things. Wrestling. I mean, a lot of people are like, is she coming back? I mean, maybe she does, because she's a competitor. She doesn't have to. She doesn't need the money. But I don't think that's why she came back in the first place. In my opinion, again, that's mine. Let me hear yours in the comments. Whatever you think, you can tell me I'm crazy. It's all good. Wrestling. If she could work on that wrestling and find multiple ways to take somebody down and then do your armbar or any other choke or anything else, that is what can make her dangerous again. Knowing that she's going to just try to clinch with you first, try to grab you, try to throw you, and do that type of thing. Now we've seen it 2 times in a row. It's been figured out. The blueprint is there. You need to change it up, and I think wrestling is where she should really go at it. The boxing, I'm glad you're training that a lot, but you got to grapple. You're a grappler. You got to learn to wrestle and learn different ways on there. The year off that she took, I don't know why it took me till as we were leading up to the fight, I started thinking, wait a minute, she's hasn't even fought for a year. I kind of believe in the ring rust. I mean, maybe for someone like Dominick Cruz, who is just a phenomenon by himself, but generally speaking, you know, getting back into the lights and the screaming and just the whole show of things, or even just the level of competition. Amanda Nunes is at her highest peak, you know, so she went in fighting the best of the best right now, and it pretty much showed. You know, she just wasn't ready, I guess. So beyond that, I'm going to finalize with this: the martial art. My girls, 9 years old, 6 years old, I just got them into jiu-jitsu, so they're white belts right now. But I've always, growing up, I always wanted to do martial arts. But I never got to. And once I got into high school, I did wrestling, which then took over my world because I was able to do that with school. But my main point is this: I always, even growing up, or if you watch the movies, The Quest, or just all the old school movies, either the Bruce Lee movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Chuck Norris, whoever your guy was, within all those even Karate Kid, for goodness sake, but within all those, there's some type of understanding about oneself. There's some type of control that you have of your body and your mind, and connecting them all together. And just that's why, they teach respect and all of these things. That's what I've always kind of known of it. And that's why I want my girls to kind of get into it, because I want them to be respectful, not only also defend themselves and that type of thing. But the reason I'm saying all of this is the martial art. Ronda handles losses pretty hard. And I'm going to go back to Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz, in the way he handled it, yes, of course he was devastated, but he got out there and answered the questions. He was honest about how he felt about the fight, how he feels, and how he's going to move forward already. Not saying that all fighters, can do that, but I think that because of last time with Holly not responding with any questions and just kind of going into hiding, basically, there's a lost connection, even with her hardcore fans, maybe going on Ellen, she has some fans in that fashion, but it's just like, in a way, there's got to be an inner peace. And how can you find an inner peace if you can't express this anger or frustration or whatever those negative feelings that she has inside of her because of these losses? It's almost like you got to let them out. And sometimes, honestly, maybe she doesn't like the media or whatever, but getting it out to the public, because she's a public figure, and people will support it and people will back it no matter if you lose or not. And that's what I just wanted to say as far as the martial art. I always felt that when people lose, and this is the biggest thing I always like to see, is the humble sandwich. I'll say it over and over again, the humble sandwich, to be the crap talker and all of these things, but then you go in there and you get worked by a true martial artist is kind of what I wanted to say. But I think it's always a learning experience, fighting, taking those losses, even learning from the wins, and all of those things is accumulating all of that to have some type of peace, understanding of your heart, mind, body. Again, I might be sounding like a hippie, but I'll be the first one to call myself a hippie. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up because that's what kind of came to mind for me. I love to see that humble sandwich, but moreover, I love to see the person that loses go ahead and eat that, humble themselves for real, and maybe show another side of them that they didn't even know that they had. So I hope that if she wants to compete, and if she wants to be better herself, maybe she can, find some peace in kind of showing us her again, not just in the wins, but also in the losses, and know that MMA fans, we got your back. Ronda, I've always kind of enjoyed watching these fights, and just like, even though I might choose against you because you talk so much crap leading up to the fight, I love all these fighters. What they're able to do to go in there and do what they do is amazing. And the whole event, UFC 207, was amazing. It was a good finale to the year, and I learned so many things out of it, and hopefully I got to share that with you. Hopefully I wasn't babbling too much, but that's how deep I kind of see it. You know, I loved seeing the fight, of course. I loved seeing, you know, people beating up each other. But moreover than that is two people's skills, two people's hearts, you know, who can conquer the other. Because at the end of the fight, you shake hands, you know, and you both come out of it learning. And even with Cody and Dominick, both of them saying that they learned from each other out of that fight. I mean, all good stuff. It was really, really good. I felt it was a good lead into this whole new year. I'm very excited for it. I'm going to start doing this weekly, see what other kind of shows I can do as well. But let me hear you guys in the comments. Tell me what you guys liked about UFC 207. What was your favorite part? What was your favorite fight? Let me hear you guys. And again, this is for the community. You want to be on the show? You want to talk MMA? Hit me up. We'll make it happen. Until next time, peace.